proposal forming is one of the fundamental 7 building blocks of sociocratic decision making. And there are 6 main steps in it. The first one is somebody presents the problem or the opportunity to the circle. The second is to identify aspects of the problem, and that's a brainstorming process where people in the group go around the circle as many times as necessary to figure out all the aspects of the problem that are relevant, and that process stops only when everybody consents and agrees that the problem has been fully scoped. The third step in the process, and I just described that's actually the third step of the process, to consent to the completeness of the list. So that's when the problem has been fully scoped. And then the fourth step in the proposal forming process is then to list specific proposal ideas for addressing the problems that have been identified in step number 2. And what happens is there's 2 parts to that process. The first is that people generate proposal ideas in rounds going around the circle. That's a brainstorming process where the idea is just to get out as many possible ideas as possible. There may be conflicting ideas, but at this stage you don't resolve them. The idea is just to get all the ideas out in a big pool.
May I ask you, please, Sarah, are we writing these things down?
Yes, there is a recorder in the group who is writing down both the we've already written down the aspects of the problem, and then we have another piece of paper that lists the proposed solution, so that we're keeping track of both the aspects of the problem and the proposals. And as we're going through and generating proposals, we're checking off against the aspects of the problem to make sure that the ideas we're coming up with to solve the problem are addressing every aspect that we have identified. And then in 4B, that's what we're doing in that second part, is that we're making sure that we have one specific proposal idea for each aspect that we've identified, so that the proposal we know is going to be complete in terms of both the scope of the problem that we've defined and the proposed solutions.
Excuse me, might we have more than one suggested proposal idea for any given aspect of the issue?
There may be more than one.
Is it okay if there's more than one?
It's fine if there's more than one.
Is it okay if some of them conflict or are like at right angles to each other?
It's okay if they conflict or are at right angles, because at this stage of the process, it's just about generating ideas. It's not about resolving them. And the proposals will actually be drafted in the next stage, which is step 5, organizing the specific proposal ideas.
Continue, please.
So once everybody agrees in the circle that we've come up with enough proposal ideas to address the scope that we've identified well enough, then the group chooses one or more tuners, people who are tasked with writing the specific proposal based on what the group has come up with. And those people shape the proposal ideas into one or more draft proposal. And it's at that point when conflicting ideas are resolved, those choices are made by the tuners. And if somebody has come up with an idea that's not included in the proposal because it's a conflicting idea, for example, that's an opportunity for that person to object later in the process if he or she feels that their idea was left out and that it's a better idea.
May I ask for something clarifying?
Sure.
When you say they can object later in the process, are you referring to they can object when later they're doing consent decision making?
Correct. So
that's right.
After the proposal has been finished by the tuners are then going to bring the completed draft proposal back to the circle for the circle members to discuss and to agree on. And at that point, people have an opportunity to raise objections if they feel the proposal is not adequate in some way.
May I step in and clarify something?
Absolutely.
Okay. They don't actually discuss unless they do what, Sarah?
Unless there's an agreement to discuss.
That's right. Somebody says, listen, let's discuss this before we consent to the completeness of this draft proposal. And, okay, for how long? Well, let's say 10 minutes. And then they set the handy-dandy timer, which if I had my way in the universe, they would have there in the meeting. And then they do. And they might come to some kind of helpful, useful information with each other prior to the 10 minutes, in which case then they go ahead and there is a consent round where they consent that the draft proposal is complete. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Might they have a discussion prior to the tuners going off to do what they do?
If the group that wants to do that, then yes.
Okay. So let's say we have a really complex, convoluted, it's probably going to be several proposals in a row sequentially through linear time, and it's controversial. Might we do this proposal forming process in the whole group with one great big meeting?
If that's the nature of the issue that's being dealt with, that may be a decision that the group makes. That's the best way to handle it.
Might we in our circle propose that to the general circle, and then voila, we do it?
Absolutely.
And is it going to take a long time?
Yes, it probably will take a long time, and people need to be prepared for that.
That's right. If it's the pet policy, go ahead and make the time. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Before you sit down, let me tell you something, and then I'm going to ask you to do this one if you don't mind. But first we have to do this, don't we? Yay! Okay.
Nice work.
Don't you love how she says things? Whoa, boy. Yeah, so clearly. I worship the God of clarity, so when I meet a clear speaking person, I'm so happy. Okay, in the sociocracy trainings that you will see other than this one, and in the book, We the People, and in the literature that you will see that other people create, these two are put together. First, we have this proposal forming, and then it goes exactly right into this. And John Buck calls that the long form. Now, you can do the first part separately, or you can do it with consent decision making. You can do it separately in two different meetings, in two different circles, at two different times, or you can do it together in the same circle, in the same meeting, one right after the other. And the reason that I have separated it out is to make it easy to learn. Because the way it's often taught, there is a chart that has a laminated 8.5 by 11 page with colorful arrows of different colors going here and there with step A, B, C, 7A, B, C, 5A, 9A, B, C. If this, then that, go there, and then you turn it over and there's other things. And I find that so confusing that I don't use it and I don't recommend it. And what I did was I asked John Buck, listen, is it okay with you if when I teach this, I teach it as clear steps with explanations and clear steps with explanations? And he said yes. And I sent him the earliest draft of this. This is multiple iterations later because of feedback. And he said, yeah, this is fine. So I've got his blessing and permission, which is a good thing. But what I'm saying this to you for is that when you run into this as all one thing, please know that it can also be all one thing. And it's often taught that way. Okay, any questions about that before we leap into the next one? And Paul.
You said it could be split into two circles.
No, not. Yeah. You could.
How can you have a proposal in one circle and a decision in another circle?
Oh, easy. We, the promotions committee, believe that we need to have more things that we do than we are currently having in our aim. So we propose this, and we send it to the general circle through our representative, and the general circle considers it and consents to it because it's a bigger decision than we can make. This is what we talked about 15 minutes ago. Do you recall that? Okay. Does this still make sense? Yeah. We can send it, quote, to a, quote, higher circle. We can send it to a lower circle on purpose because we know that it's not within our domain. That's the only time you do that. Okay. Thank you for clarifying. Any other comments or questions now that we've had a little overview of consent decision making?
Yeah, I want to make sure that I understand in the proposal forming process, is there a separate consent round where the circle says, okay, the proposal is now ready to be to go through the consent decision making process? Is that what this is?
That's what this is supposed to mean.
So the circle, so everybody looks at the proposal and says, okay, it's ready to be discussed. So at that,
it's ready to be consented to. It's ready to consider and decide.
I keep using the word discuss. It's ready to for the circle to go through the consent decision making process.
That's right.
So at that point, the group could either say, okay, we have the proposal. Let's go through the consent process next circle meeting and table it until then, or the group could then start this process of consent decision making.
That's right, they could. And let me just ask you a trick question, warning, trick question. Did we in our circle, after we created this proposal and we have the consent round, did we consent to the proposal?
No.
You consented to proposing the proposal.
Yeah, we consented to the draft proposal. And what did we consent to? That it is what?
Complete.
Complete. What do we mean by complete?
Good
Covers all
enough.
the aspects that we
Both. Go ahead, Paul.
covered all the aspects that we discovered in step 2.
That's right. It covered all of the aspects that we discovered, uncovered, brainstormed, identified in step 2 of the proposal forming process. Do you see how the proposal forming process is designed to be thorough and clear and help us make a better proposal so that by the time we actually consider and decide it, it's less likely there'll be gigantic big things left out of it. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you.